CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES Cures.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES Cures Show. This is where we explore cutting-edge wellness from credible sources. I'm Kara Sundlin, and as a self-professed wellness nerd, I'm super excited about our guest today. Dr. Marschall Runge is the Executive Vice President for Medical Affairs at the University of Michigan, my alma mater. Dean of the University of Michigan Medical School and CEO of Michigan Medicine, although he's going to be taking a step back as he starts to embrace retirement, at least one of those roles. But that's because you've been writing a new book called The Great Healthcare Disruption. So go blue, and thank you for being with us, Doctor.
Thanks, Kara, and go blue.
Yeah. So, I've got the book right here, and I think any of us who've just been to the doctor recently or gotten a bill, we get super confused. We don't know what's going on. It's like people know that we need to do something, but not sure what. And of course, in Washington, there's fights about this all the time. You describe this as a big moment in healthcare. So what do you mean by that? What do you think? Are we like on the cliff of change?
Well, I hope so. I think there are many great things about healthcare in the United States. And if I was critically ill, there's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than in the United States. We have absolutely terrific care. However, it's complicated, it's expensive, and as I think probably almost everybody knows, I know, if we're trying to get an appointment with a new doctor, it can be a long wait. So access isn't what we'd like. Our healthcare is quite expensive, and as a country and to individuals. And so on the bright side, there's lots of advances in new medications, new approaches, in the application of AI, artificial intelligence, to healthcare. So I think we have a bright future ahead. We got to be ready to change. And I look at disruption as a positive disruption and ask the question, how can our health system and our health as individuals be better?
Right. Part of things you get, which we'll get into, some of the longevity that people are experimenting with in the book, some of the billionaires where they're investing, perhaps creating a no-die culture. I know you get there, but let's just break it down. Everyone knows AI is happening. I think most of us don't know exactly how it's going to affect daily life other than asking ChatGPT some questions. What do you think specific technologies or trends will make our healthcare so transformative or such big changes ahead? What can we look out for?
Well, I'll start with what seems like it's mundane, but it's important. And that is making it easier for healthcare providers to do their job. So over the years, and in my years in healthcare, physicians, nurses, all healthcare providers have been required to provide more and more background, more and more interacting with electronic medical records, which can be time consuming. And so one of the big positives about AI is it's now making it possible for when you go to see your healthcare provider, doctor, nurse, whoever, rather than that person being glued to their computer and typing on the side, trying to keep up with their medical record, you can have a conversation. And you can focus on your provider can focus on you. And that's made possible by a technology called ambient AI, where your interaction is recorded, and then it produces a top tier, a really excellent medical note. And that saves doctors an hour or two a day.
Wow. I just experienced that. I went for my annual exam, and I did notice my doctor and I were having quite the conversation. And then I got an email hours later. We know you can't remember everything. Here are notes about your visit. So that is something new since the last time I went. So we're going to see AI. I think people get nervous if you think about AI diagnosing us or using it. But at the same time, if you don't know what's wrong with you, I know a lot of people go on to ChatGPT, describe their symptoms, and ask, what's wrong? What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's interesting to do. I think, I find ChatGPT, that's my favorite AI engine also. I find it really useful. And in these interactions, for example, what I just described, AI may list all the possibilities it thinks of in terms of what might be causing the problem that you went to the doctor for. And that I can tell you as a physician, That's extremely helpful. 9 times out of 10, there's nothing on that list that I didn't think about. But every once in a while, there's something that it triggers me to think, well, wait a minute. Maybe there is something more out of the ordinary, something more complicated.
Mm.
It can also be really terrific in terms of helping healthcare providers, doctors be certain that they're not going to prescribe a medicine or suggest a therapy that might be uh, contraindicated, not the right thing for you.
Mm.
So I think as a somebody sitting at your shoulder, AI is pretty good. It has great knowledge and it's becoming more and more accurate every day.
So you say sitting at your shoulder. So that's the important part, that we as humans use it, but it doesn't take over medicine.
Yes. Oh, you hit that perfectly. And I have zero interest in having my healthcare provided by an AI bot. You'll see lots of promotion around that. I don't. I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen. But I think as a assistant to your healthcare providers, it can be very valuable.
Mm. So what about cost? It's so expensive. You know, I was actually just in an Uber and down at the University of Maryland where my daughter's going to go to school. And the Uber driver was from Afghanistan. And he's like, this is the best country in the world. And he had a green card, everything. He's like, I love it here. He's like, the only thing I don't get are your taxes and your healthcare system. And I said, okay, of course, we all feel that way. But he mentioned that he didn't know. So we went to the emergency room for a rash he had. It turned out it was poison ivy, very common for us. He'd never heard of it, not existent where he was. And he got a $5,000 bill. I said, that's crazy. You need to challenge that. All you got was a steroid? And he said, I did challenge it. They said, that's how much it cost, you know, without insurance or whatever. So, I mean, that may be one isolated case, but I think we all know that sometimes it's just nuts. The bills you get, or whether you have insurance or don't have insurance. How do you think we can fix this in the Great Disruption, where people can actually at least get basic health care?
Well, great question. And I'll throw out a couple of statistics that I think are relevant. One is I think most people know, but if you don't, healthcare in the United States per capita, it's about $12,000 per person if you average it all out. And when you look at other countries like the US that are uh, wealthy and have uh, excellent healthcare, that cost is about half as much. And why is that? Well, part of it is another statistic is if you look at primary care, the number of primary care doctors per person is we are by far the lowest in the world among these peer countries. So we need more primary care. We need more focus on preventive health care. And I think putting these things together, what we can do that will be best for us, best for your health, is to try to provide prevention, try to provide primary care that can deal with these issues promptly. So your friend, the Uber driver, if rather than having to go to the emergency room, if he had a healthcare provider he could call and be seen by, or even have a conversation, the cost of that and the cost of being treated would be,
Yeah. I did tell him never go to the emergency room again. I think he didn't know that. But I mean, there are Americans who
right.
don't know that either.
Yeah, we do that. We
Yeah.
do it all the time.
So do you think
So
retail, like, are we going to eventually, I know CVS is changing that. Are we eventually just going to go get our colds treated at the drugstore and not go to the doctor anymore? Or do you see all of these urgent cares and retail centers kind of taking over?
I think I'll think of them like an AI assistant. I think they can be part of the system and they should be part of the system. Um, but I also think that although it gets to be a very hot topic politically, I think that it's important that all Americans have some basal level of health care, not the blue plate special, not concierge care, but a level of health care that everybody has that's available. And I've had the privilege of working in a couple of governmental or federally funded systems. One is federally funded healthcare clinics. The other is actually in the Indian Health Service. The government does a great job of it, and they do it less expensively. It doesn't have all the frills, but these are set up so that people can get their care immediately for what they need. And if it's more complicated, then they need to go somewhere else. But I think having that kind of basal level, which can be partly provided by CVS and pharmacies, can be partly provided by Amazon and 27 24/7 telehealth. These things will all be part of the solution, but I think also part of the solution is thinking about healthcare in a different way than we do.
So how do we get there? I mean, I know that you're right, it's very political, but to have some basic level of basic healthcare that every American gets, which I guess is the direction we sort of were moving, we didn't get all the way there. It's a complicated question, but basically, can we get there, even with the way our tax system is set up now, without becoming a quote unquote socialist country?
I think we can, and I'm not talking about a socialist country at all. Um, one country that gets round acclaim for their healthcare is Denmark, and people say they have a great government health system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have a good government health system, but more than half the people in Denmark have supplemental private healthcare insurance that they buy. So I think we need to look, instead of thinking it's either all or nothing, we need to look and see, is there a way we can help meet our needs? I will say if you look at the cost of healthcare, commercial insurance averages about 15 or more percent of the healthcare dollar goes to administrative costs. Look at Medicare, that's 2%. So you make your complaints about Medicare or Medicaid or the VA system, but they all deliver good quality healthcare at a much lower price. So I think the answer is yes, we can afford it. Can we come to terms with it and just take the rhetoric out of the discussion?
So who do you think gets it right in the world? Like, who would be one of the best countries and that we would model after? Because I know in the book you write, sometimes it's not all or nothing. It could be a two-tier. Maybe we get some basic, like you're not going to go bankrupt healthcare if you get sick.
Right.
And then you have more money, you could buy more.
Absolutely. So I'll mention a couple. One is the European countries. It could be Germany, Switzerland, some of those. Have a system like what you and I are just talking about. Another country that I find very intriguing is Singapore. So Singapore has used their governmental influence to create some improvement in health. So, for example, although personally I have a hard time putting down a bag of Cheetos or Doritos, I'm no fan of these highly processed foods. I think they've been damaging to our health. And I think controlling them is something that's important. However, they're so cheap. In Singapore, they tax those foods quite heavily, and they use that tax income to make the cost of nutritious foods much, much lower. So you might say, well, that's the government controlling food supplies. Well, it's not controlling it, it's just making it more attractive. They also, for people that can walk to their place of employment, they make driver's licenses and auto tags much more expensive. So the final thing I'll say is some of the drugs we think about. So a popular example I talk about in the book is the weight loss drugs, so-called weight loss drugs, which started out as diabetes drugs.
Yeah.
Those drugs are very expensive, $1,000 or more per month. However, in talking with colleagues of mine in the pharmaceutical industry, if the United States decided to use its bulk purchasing power to buy these drugs in bulk and provide them at a lower cost, they could probably be provided at a quarter of the cost, which would make them affordable. I'm using that just as one example. If the government used its purchasing power, and it's talking about doing that with pharmaceuticals, that would be one way to make these new kinds of medications much more affordable.
Yeah, we're talking about the GLP-1 drugs, and
Yes.
we all know at this point someone who's on them. My co-host on Great Day Connecticut has lost 50 pounds now, and he thinks he'll stay on it for the rest of his life. He thinks it's the greatest thing. I've had other people tell me they couldn't stay on it, they didn't feel well. Other people say, hey, that's cheating. But either way, what role do you think GLP-1 medications will have? Are they safe, and should we be using them to address the obesity epidemic?
I think they're going to have a big role, and I'll tell you why. So they started out as a very effective way to treat diabetes, to bring down the measure called hemoglobin A1C that's commonly looked at for how well your diabetes is controlled. And they found, really by happenstance, that people taking those drugs lost weight. Subsequently, it's turned out that the way those drugs act is actually their main action is in the brain, and they inhibit the surges of dopamine's a hormone that you have surges of when something exciting happens. So if you, and they're related to addictive habits. So cigarette smoking is highly related to the dopamine surge you get after smoking. Same with alcohol, same with food, same with gambling. It's even important in sleep apnea. That class of drugs, I think, has been one of those things that was developed in the United States and came forward and had more benefits than we imagined. They've now been used for over a decade in clinical studies. They're quite safe. They do have side effects, main side effect being GI side effects. People may feel nauseated or have GI problems related to them. But I think and it's funny that you mentioned, you're cheating if you take those drugs. I mean, what the heck? I mean, the goal is to lose weight. It's not to whether you did it using some approach. And they're all different kinds. I mean, I think Weight Watchers works. I think all kinds of different diets work. But I'll tell you, for many people, it's really hard. For myself, it's really hard to live in our environment, to try to watch a football game, see delicious food advertised at every commercial break. And we live in a society that is really forced, it is commercialized food in a way that is probably not present anywhere else in the world. So they're safe. I would take one, and I frequently think about it. And I think they're the kind of drugs that are being developed, and there are other kinds of drugs that are being developed that can be helpful in many different circumstances. And we have to make them affordable.
Yeah, right now over $1,000 a month in some cases, not affordable. I want to continue this conversation. We obviously are going to talk about lifestyle because, we say, oh, there's free ways to lose weight and there's free ways to reduce our health care, and we don't do the best job of it. Certainly our new Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., is trying to get people to do more of this. We're going to have that conversation after a brief word from our sponsor. Let's listen.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit WheelerHealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
Back now with Dr. Marschall Runge, and he is the author of The Great Healthcare Disruption. I think we can pull it up and show it to you as well. It's available everywhere right now. It's Big Tech, Bold Policy, and the Future of American Medicine. We're kind of diving into it all. Even in the half hour I have with you, Doctor, we're not going to get to probably everything. But we were just talking about GLP-1s, and I just want to finish up with something before I move to lifestyle. You said we're learning that it affects our brain. My understanding of those drugs is that it really just increases your hunger hormone, so you can say no to food because you're not hungry. Is it more than that?
I think that that's what the drugs do. Is they increase GLP-1, which is a hormone that results in you feeling satisfied, satiated, and so that's how it works. The question that has come up since then is, how really does that affect that hormone? And it is most hormones, not all of them, have a relationship between the brain and the part of the body that they affect. And that's true with GLP-1. Affects the GI tract, but it has a neural effect as well. So it's a combined effect.
Okay, so back to that dopamine thing. I'm thinking people who are, people who have ADHD or people who feel like they have an eating disorder. These drugs are even more helpful because they're losing the war from a mental perspective of just eating when they're not hungry.
That's right. That's exactly right, Kara. And it's a false assumption to think that everyone is the same and they can just control that, because just as in every other part of human beings, some people, that system is just not as developed.
Yeah.
For what reason, nobody knows, but it's true.
Okay, so that's really important, and we just did another show about the shame around weight loss, that it actually shaming people or saying they're lazy or saying work harder actually in the recent journal studies that makes it worse. It makes it harder to lose weight. And Oprah said when she went on the drugs that she finally knows what thin people feel like, that she's like, I'm not thinking about food all the time for the first time in my life, which is interesting to talk about the mental aspect. I just wanted to bring that up as people are considering it. So I want to move into lifestyle. I mean, we know we need to walk. We know we need to move. We know we need to eat good food. When you study the blue zones, which you talk about in here, the people who live routinely a lot longer than we do in America, and maybe they're not on drugs and they're doing just fine. So how do we do that? And do you agree with some of the changes that our new Health and Human Services Secretary is trying to make as far as putting the focus on prevention?
I do think we have a tremendous amount of chronic disease in the United States, and I think trying to prevent that will improve our health. And if our health's better, we'll feel better, we'll live longer, and it won't cost the United States so much money in healthcare. So there's an overlap. You mentioned that later in the book I talked about longevity, and there's an overlap between, I think, a strong overlap between healthy habits and longevity. And if you look at any of the people who talk about longevity, a couple of examples I gave in the book had to do with, one was a very wealthy person who was spending $2 million a year trying to reverse aging.
Yes,
Eric
I want to stop
Topol,
you right there. $2 million a year. I know that none of us could really do that, but that is really $2 million a year. I was reading the things he's doing, and he even, if you can remember, I can't pull it up, his name, and he publishes what he does. Most of us couldn't afford it, but he lays under an LED light. He goes to sleep every night at 8:30. He does a lot of things.
Yes, his name's Brian Johnson. And I mean, the guy is incredibly disciplined. But when you look at sort of the 5 keys of his program, and then you compare that to, there's another recent book published by Eric Topol, who's a colleague of mine, called Super Agers, and they're many of the same things. And so you talked about sleep, and this has been, as I've been thinking about this, honestly, it's changed my life. So I never thought that, I thought I could get by on a few hours of sleep a night when needed and not to worry about it. They both, and many people now stress, if you go to sleep at about the same time and you wake up at about the same time and you reliably get the amount of sleep every single night that your body needs, for some people that might be 7 hours, for some people it might be 8.5 hours. That is a key to health. And then if you add on top of that, the other things people have shown in these blue zones that you talked about, Kara, are community, the importance of community, whether it's friends or family, having a community to be connected to. They talk about healthy eating, and we talked about that a little bit. Another line that I thought was just great was that fitness and exercise are not they're essential. I forgot the way it was posed, but if you want to be healthy, fitness and exercise, excuse me. And so there are 5 or so components that I can tell you I have not been following.
Okay.
And now I'm just now trying to see if I can get regular sleep, and I feel so much better. And then I feel less tempted by the wrong kind of foods. And I feel more likely when I go home at night that I will in fact get on the elliptical machine, that instead of being used as a clothes hanger, I can use every day and watch a little bit of TV. Maybe I'll watch your show, although you're too early in the day, but watch your show.
Well, we're streaming.
I feel better after a couple of months of that.
We're streaming. Go to WFSB Plus. You can watch it whenever you want on that elliptical.
Oh, good.
And on WFSB.com, just click on Kara's Cures. Your interview is going to be up there in a moment. But so I want to ask, in our final 5 minutes, there's a whole lot in here, and it's going to be so interesting, and I hope good what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. But give me 3 things that you'd love everyone to take away. I love that you're being honest. You're not doing everything. But like, if you really want to disrupt your own little healthcare world, what are a few things we can do right now that make a difference?
Well, I think I'll list 3. The first is sleep. And that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for me. I get lying down, but I think if we can do what is recommended in terms of sleep, that will make a big difference. The second is, I'll call it fitness and exercise. And remembering, just like weight loss, you don't have to be jogging 5 miles a day. If you get 150 minutes or 180 minutes, meaning 30 minutes a day of some kind of exercise, most days of the week, that's going to extend your life expectancy and your health. And the third is, I think wearables can be very helpful. I went ahead and bought a watch that counts the number of steps I take, more as a reminder than anything else. I do think in several commentaries, people talk about if you get fixated with too many wearables and you live your life looking at every single aspect of your health, you may not live longer, but it'll certainly seem like longer. That's a joke.
Yeah.
So
No, I have my
I
Oura
think that,
Ring, and I love it because
yeah.
what you measure, you can improve. And I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I'm moving around all the time. And then you realize you only did 4,000 steps because I'm moving around a small studio.
Right.
So, it does help you be honest about, okay, when you think I'm already doing everything. No, in fact, there are some things you can do. So I love those ideas. Let's talk about prevention. The guy in the book who wants to live forever is taking 100 supplements a day. I don't think any of us are going to do that. But I do have a lot of functional doctors on this show who say, we could do a better job about making sure that people are at least taking vitamin D and eating better food and the stuff that they really push for optimal health. Do you agree we need to get more into prevention and merge some of the naturopathic medicine principles into the regular sphere?
Let me just, don't know how I can say it more strongly. Absolutely. I think that's right. And I think healthy eating, I think paying attention to things that may be lacking in our diet. Vitamin D is a great example. Vitamin D has many benefits, and people don't necessarily think of that. Vitamin D and calcium, particularly in women, is incredibly helpful in either reducing or getting rid of osteoporosis, weak bones. And so I think we need to now kind of come together. They're good ideas from all kinds of different directions and put those together and really focus on what works for us as individuals in terms of our health. And I can just tell you from my experience with thousands and thousands of patients and interactions with others and myself, it is generally different for people. So there's some people that hot yoga is a great thing. I tried that for a while. I kind of liked it. But other people aerobics, other people Peloton, other people walking in groups. Here in Michigan, as you know, it can be a little chilly in the winter, and they are great mall walkers. You go to any of the malls, and they're getting their exercise there in the mall. They're talking to friends.
Yeah. Well, doctor, I know we're out of time right now, but I want to let everyone know again, the book is The Great Healthcare Disruption, and you can find it wherever you find your books. I appreciate you being with us. We get into AI, we get into new policy changes and the future of American medicine. I hope you take away, everyone at home, some great ways to make your own health better. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us. And for everyone at home, thank you and have a great day and be well.
CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.